Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy. This week, we are going to be discussing the archetype of the heroine and Gene Key 35. My name is John Rhodes, if you haven't met me. And of course, with me here is Bella, who I'm so excited to welcome back to this side of the Atlantic, joining us from Miami now, I assume. So really glad to have you back, Bella. And, I was thinking about this archetype today and this hexagram movement today. And we're moving from a space of activating the electrical power of enthusiasm in our guts. That's what we did in our transmission last week, was to activate that enteric nervous system aspect so that it starts scintillating with all of this electrical energy. And I was thinking about it because last week you mentioned, Bella, that thunder over the earth was the hexagram. When lightning strikes the earth, what happens? It starts a fire, and that fire consumes everything in its path, which leads us to our current transit, which with Gene Key 35 is the shadow of hunger, this expression, this genetic expression that comes through us that consumes everything and can never be satisfied. Of course, eventually we will be led to the city of boundlessness, but it is the way of adventure. So the gift of adventure is upon us through the archetype of the heroine. And I'm really excited to be discussing with this today. So, Bella, how are you feeling? Are you feeling that fire like burning up everything? Or where are you at with this energy and what's happening?
Almost felt like we were out of the energy, so I had to just check, but we have one line left. I feel like I'm still orienting with it, and that I always look at it as something foreign to me. I don't know why, but I think it is because I don't have a lot of that circuitry, the collective sensing circuitry. And I have felt, of course, with the current transit of Neptune in the 36, which is a long transit, and in the 35, I felt that channel of transistoriness. So the whole kind of thing, like, like why are we? Sometimes we don't understand why we have to experience something until we have experienced it and we can make sense of it. So that's the sensing circuit. Like we have to feel the experience fully, and then with hindsight is when we can understand and gain wisdom and maybe move forward in a less hungry way, or
Yeah, interesting. This is the second transit in a row where I've had both the programming partner and the harmonic gate, but not the actual transit channel. So for me, this feels like one of those other aspects that kind of draws me in and draws me forward. I love the idea of adventure. It is one of the ideas from my childhood that felt like that's where I want to go in my life to feel complete. And of course, here's this hunger driving that desire, and that will never be satisfied. And while we were kind of going back and forth about this a little bit last night, you mentioned one of the things that came up to you is like, oh, of course, Richard Rudd is going to say that the answer is love, because that's always the answer. And you shared that somehow you feel like it's an oversimplification, or it's not the entirety of what we need to experience and look at with this. So I'm wondering quite exactly, like, I'm wondering why it feels too simple, and maybe what else you might have in your awareness that might point at something that you feel like love doesn't address. I'm really curious about that.
Well, I do believe that love addresses everything. So absolutely. But again, sometimes when I read the gene keys, I do feel like part of the circuitry isn't completely there. And I guess here where I want to go is knowing the psychological issues that many of us have been through, like, mental imbalance. And to say that love can, of course love is the nurturing everything, but I have felt that, I remember a few years ago I did a post about antidepressants, and I think that these are things that should be part of the conversation of the 35, definitely. And also that it's part of our genome, it's part of that hunger that is leading to progress and evolution. So it's not only bad, but somehow in the mix of the values that we have in today's society and the responsibilities and the pressures, I feel like the recipe that kind of is leading to the mental unhealth, or how you would say, that is not completely addressed. And I think Richard is saying in one place, if you take antidepressants for for a short while of time, you're going to feel how it is to have normal or higher levels of serotonin, but it's just a quick fix, and it is. Yet knowing that maybe 20% of people in this country are taking, or women at least, I think, in this country and in Sweden as well. I think the Western countries and the very developed countries with a lot of technology are the countries where more people are taking antidepressants. So for me, there is something here that I would like to address. Love is the answer, but what are the layers that also need to be looked at?
Yeah. I love that perspective, because I was just talking about it today with somebody about what is love when it's the answer, because most of us experience love as a hunger. We hunger for love. We hunger for it in our relationships. We hunger for it from ourselves. We hunger for it from the world to show it to us in response to what we've brought. And this driving force of the low frequency, what we don't even actually realize is that it kind of prevents us from that answer manifesting in our bodies. And as we're in that space of hunger, we begin to suffer. That low frequency causes us to suffer, whether it's our moods, depression, or it's our relationships where we're connected with a partner where we feel like, oh, I'm not getting the love that I deserve from what I've put into this relationship. And to me, what that really brings up is that the way that we often relate with love about what it is, how it functions in us, and what it's going to be like when we finally got that final answer to all of life's hungers and desires and questions, is that we don't really know what love is. And our ideas about what it is aren't it. So, being able to face these issues, being able to turn in and face this hunger of saying, oh my gosh, I'm in a relationship and I want more love, and recognize that we're never from that position going to receive what it is that we're wanting. Like, part of that, and it's so funny you bring this up, because like he doesn't even mention love hardly in that description of hunger. It's like, yes, we talk about that it's this outer outer progress is made because we've externalized this hunger to outside of us and always seeking what we want from outside of us. So those of us who have become wise to that, we go like, oh, well, we've got to like look inward, and we've got to have these self-love and self-care practices in order to experience a different reality. And, you know, even that doesn't come to grips with this idea that as long as we have this hunger, and as long as we fail to recognize that going after satisfying it isn't going to make a change, it's like, even when we come into that awareness, what is the next stage of that allows us to move into something that feels more sustainable, that feels more true for our experience? So, I mean, it's a real conundrum, and I don't know. I don't know your experience with that, Bella. Like if you've experienced that hunger and felt like I don't know the way, and then what happens then?
You know, I can more, like I said, there is something with this gene key that feels foreign to me, and I wonder why, because you know the bottom of it, the bottom trigram is the earth trigram, so that's my life's work, earth over earth. So kind of like I know the feeling of that element, and then the top trigram, like you were saying, is fire, and fire over fire. The 30 gene key is my midheaven. So of course, like when we look at the elements of it and the alchemy of it, we all have all the gene keys in us. But like I'm saying, it's not something that I can really relate to, like feeling that hunger and there is nothing I can do with it. It's more like I've said before, I felt existential despair, and I've done whatever I could to not feel the existential despair. But the desire hunger, which we can also see in gene key 41, 30, 36, 35, like that whole way up from the fuel of the 41 that is having the energy to have an experience, to the desire for that experience in the 30, to then the friction with the other in the 36, to then translate it in like the expressed hunger through the throat in the 35. But what I can say, when I look at people around me, Richard Rudd has this, for example, my partner has the 35.4 in his culture. Ashley's husband, I think it's his life's work. The mentor that I was working with for a long time in LA had it as the radiance. So a lot of people that I see that have it in a powerful position, it's this inherent wanting to be alive or wanting to feel alive, the desire to be alive. That's for me what I translate the 35 to. Maybe more than love, you know, love for me seems like, yes, it's always the ultimate answer. And Richard Rudd as a 4-6, of course, is going to go to love and be like, oh, if we flood the heart, then we'll flood the brain and the signal substances and everything is going to be beautiful. But for me here, there is something about our society and how we are feeling alive. And it's funny, like I read this, I can't remember exactly how it was, but right before coming on here, Shatanya had posted about, what was it? Something weird. Masturbation is solving two problems at the same time. Like, I want to look, I don't know, I'm bringing this in right now, but it kind of just was so perfect of the kind of society that we are living in right now. Maybe I can find it. Masturbation combines the two greatest sensations in life, orgasms and not dealing with other people. You know, and for me, yes, that like there is something with that kind of consummation and that instant gratitude, which is the same thing as scrolling on your phone, like the dopamine response that you have of anticipating that you're going to see something that's going to be funny or cool, or that's the whole thing, that it's keeping our brain chemistry like in anticipation and hunger for something. And really what I see, all these people or these few people that I actually spoke about right now, is that they have this beautiful desire to live. And that in our society, the way that we have learned to live, or the way that we have forgotten to live, that's something that's very prominent, I believe. Even with kids that learn to swipe with one finger, and they can't, like the motor, like they can't use their hands anymore. And the same thing with the beautiful way of of lovemaking. And we have a whole, like the biggest industry in the world is the porn industry. So yeah, I feel like that's where I kind of want to take it. How can we feel alive more than love is the ultimate answer for everything?
Yeah, so that kind of like, that actually leads me to another question, which is like, who is this archetype of the heroine? Because somehow I feel like that hunger isn't part of her experience. Like, who is she, and why is she? Like when I opened up the 64 doors and I looked at this archetype, I was like, I kind of did like a little double take, like, wait a minute, what is this? And then I see a little bit about her, and I'm like, oh gosh, that really does kind of describe, this archetype of like, how does this hero heroine archetype function in our world? And I'm curious though, now that here we have our discussion has now expanded this, much more deeply than that archetype description kind of goes. And I'm wondering, where does she come into this, and how is she feeling more life? What is that all about? And why is she feeling more life? What's going on there?
I would go back to circuitries here and see what she's connecting to. So she's connecting to the storm. So being fully alive is to always be ready for the storm. And that includes the emotional storm. And that includes actually feeling all the states. And we are there. We are in the emotional circuitry, we could say, from the 41 to the 30 to the 35, 36 to 35. So it is to want to live fully. I actually think that that's the answer. And the heroine, somehow, I feel like the feminine, with the second gene key and all that. We have spoken before, why are some of the archetypes feminine? Well, there's something in the essence of the feminine that says, I can embrace the storm. Thank you for the invitation. It's like what I feel like she says. And there is a similar thing with archetype 22 here, which is a similar circuitry, but on the individual side. So now we are in the collective side of the sensing circuit. But if you go in one step in the body graph, we have the 1222, and that is that openness, that complete openness and expression of that emotional beauty state, humanness. So for me, there's a humanness here, an aliveness, and that's what she speaks to. She's not afraid of the humanness. She's not afraid of the storm. And maybe one more thing that came to me when I was thinking about this transit before, it feels a lot like the third line. 36, 35 to me feels a lot like the third line. So there is a robustness, an emotional robustness in this archetype, and also in the storm archetype, where there are going to be many storms, but part of that, their connection and who they are as themselves, the archetypal qualities, is that, okay, there is a storm. So what? Like, get off a little bit of that and shake it off, and then you can live life again. And you become richer and richer and richer. So it's a richness of life, I would say. And that part of that is love. But there are more colors to it that I feel like both the 35 and the 36 are appreciating.
Yeah, so I have the 36 in my conscious nodes. It's my south node. So I feel pretty comfortable with it. And of course, then the 6 is my north node. So so in that experience that I have of those two kind of surrounding this question of hunger, of adventure, and it feels like this process of engaging with them, of saying yes to the storm, saying yes, maybe even to the hunger, because this isn't something that any of us is free of. It's part of the human collective experience. And my experience of this ascension of love is that it satiates that hunger in a way that nothing else I've experienced does. It doesn't really manage to do anything with it. So here we are in this process, like of hungering, whether it's spiritual awareness, or it's more love in our life, or it's like some form of sexual satisfaction that can come without all of the mess, all of the storms that our partners often bring us. I think that speaks to that post about masturbation. It's like, okay, yeah, it's like a way to feel the love without the mess. But I feel like the adventure, the actual adventure of life, is in a different form of love that we maybe are not as familiar with. It's not so emotional, because the emotions aren't really, they're just movements happening in our body. And I think when Richard is talking about love, it's this like eternal quality. So within that eternal quality, all of those movements of emotion are going to happen, whether it's, no matter what it is. And if we begin to think about, oh, love is descending in me, and it's this sort of quality of experiencing life, the thing that we think love is can't possibly be it, because here we are experiencing the emotions of love and saying like, oh, I'm feeling love from this person, and then when changes happen, it's like, oh, I'm not feeling it anymore. Where did the love go? And I feel like this heroine doesn't, like, her embracing of the adventure, she doesn't allow that to stop her. Like, she takes the next step. She steps into a storm. She shows up over and over and over again for herself. And then as she does that process, she begins to tap into that field of love, because it doesn't matter what shows up. It doesn't matter to the heroine how another person behaves, or how you are fulfilled. That ever presence of her commitment. But for me, that's there's my 29 showing up. And everybody's got their own idea of what love is, and everybody wants to tell everyone else when they feel like they've got it. But what happens in life when the focus of that love is destroyed? Whether it's through relationship with a person, or its relationship with a process of living life. So there's, I love seeing all this, like, there's all this discussion going about what love is, and like how we experience it, and what's going on here. And I feel like the quality that is present in this archetype, I mean, here I am, a person who has had an experience of the dissension of loving presence into my body, where my experience of that was like, okay, golden light is just flowing out of my chest, and it is like, no matter where I turn. And then as I learned through that process, like, oh my gosh, like, even though that's descended into my body, I can become so disconnected from it and not be in touch with it anymore. But there's something in this heroine that is like, allows us to reconnect and reconnect and reconnect again without becoming exhausted. I love, okay, John, do I need a hug? I feel like my expression is giving the impression that I don't have access to this. I ask the questions not on my own personal behalf. I'm asking these questions on behalf of the archetype that is inhabited by those shadow frequencies. I'm asking on behalf of the experiences that we all still carry in us, that carry us into a place of all of the experiences that we have when we feel love is present. What are the things that happen with this particular energy frequency when we run into our lower frequency modes, where we suppress that suffering and we end up in the, you know, the repressive side? And what happens when we, you know, go the other way and we're expressing the anger? And when I was thinking about that, those two modes of expression where we're reactive or repressive, and we feel that feeling, it's like, what happens when the anger is present? Well, is somebody just always angry? Sure, there are some people who are. But at first we feel that anger, like, oh, I'm gonna compromise myself for as long as I can take it until it blasts out of me. And then it's like, blah, 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 blah. Or in the other form, you know, the way of expressing ourselves, or rather not expressing what's deep inside of us until it bursts out, or maybe it never bursts out and we just are stuck in this area. And I want to actually, there. So what do those two patterns bring us into? Blame and the reactive nature, which is when, you know, Bella, if you and I got into an argument and we were like going at it, what's going on there? You know, like, there is this movement in the direction of blame. And then when we're not willing to engage in that way, but we're still feeling the pain deep inside of us. What's happening? We're actually sending that blame inwardly, and it's kind of like rumbling inside of us. So, Bella, I want to ask for your perspective about what's going on here, and when don't so many of us have the hunger for that to be no longer a part of our lives, our relationships? What is coming from the heroine that allows that process to actually occur?
Somehow it feels complicated, but I'm going to share my screen. And I don't know, I'm going to say.
Now we're getting to it.
So, I mean, I feel like just by looking at this, we can understand a lot. So these are the elements or the trigrams. And like you're seeing, we have earth on the bottom, we have fire on the top. So reaching beyond while rooting beneath. We have the two elements, the one that is the most slow and grounded, earth, and the one that's the quickest and, you know, craziest in a way, with the fire. So we have both. And that is the passionate receptivity, the passion of the fire and the receptivity of the earth. And it's both reaching beyond and rooting beneath. That's progress, because when it has that, it actually can go forward, right? Because it both has the groundedness and it has that energy to go fast and go far. I want to go to the frequencies. So we have spoken about love as the solution. And of course, if we look at the frequency band, contraction and fear is the low frequency. So that's where we have a lot of us that don't play at the heroine's level. And then love and openness is the higher frequency. So of course, at the love frequency, the contracted frequency doesn't exist. So I feel like just kind of making that very simple observation. I can feel with my partner. I can feel it in the relationship with people with a 35. We can be in adventure and playing together. And this is collective circuitry. We're sensing whatever is going on in the adventure together. And then suddenly I feel like the hunger in the other person takes over. Like, so that there's no equilibrium anymore. I feel the hunger takes over. And suddenly the adventure is not for both. It's for that person that wanted that experience. And for me, because I have these people that are really 35 in my life, I think I'm sensitive to that. And for me, when you do that, when you say, okay, now I want this, now I want my orgasm, or now I want this, like whatever it is that you want, it's like when you go and you take that, because that's what the 35 does. When you take that, you are actually desiring dislocation. Because if you have lived with that 35 your whole life, you know that when you make that decision, that's the same as saying, okay, I want this to be dislocated. I want this to not be in equilibrium anymore. And that I feel for those of us that fall into the shadow of the 35, we, at a more conscious level, we can observe that happen and be like, okay, now I did it. That's the first step. And maybe next time when you want to have that thing, you can pause, like Richard Rudd says, for 2 seconds and see, where's love in this? Is there love in this? Where's the true love in this? Where's the true receptiveness in this? Where's the true togetherness in this? And that adventure, it's there when we can orient with lightness in every moment. Oh my God, I just wanted this so badly. But I know that by wanting this so badly, I'm like doing this, and it's not that it's wrong, because like we say, the friction in the storm is part of the circuitry. But still, if we want to be in the gift frequency, what is asking of us is that light orientation where we don't attach to an experience, because that's what the heroine does. She has all these experiences. That's why she's the heroine. So again, if we desire to have a higher frequency, if you want to have the adventure, it's the light orientation that's asked for us, playing with the fire, not getting consumed by it. And then I love the city, and I don't want to explain it, but boundlessness is rapturous unity. You know, it's like, I can't even wrap my head around that, but it sounds so beautiful. Like that for me, again, going back to the orgasm that we started with Chitanya, and like, you know, here again, boundlessness is rapturous unity. Isn't that what we all long for? Isn't that the opposite of the distraction? You know, when what Kelly was saying in the chat, you know, adventure might look like adventure, but often it can be a way of running away or distracting ourselves. But in the Civic frequency, I think we can all feel the essence. Boundlessness is rapturous unity, because there is no limit to that. Like there is no limit to rapturous unity, is there? You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you brought this picture here, and I'd love for you to leave it here for a moment, because when I'm looking at it and I'm seeing that description in the hexagram of fire just blazing across the earth, and then you see adventure is light orientation. I think about that and I'm like, okay, fire blazing across the earth. What is going on here? There is light being given off. And it reminds me of the picture of the heroine that is in the 64 Doors, which is a picture looking from behind at a woman gazing at the sun as it's either coming up or going down, and she's got some fire blazing right next to her that she had herself lit. And I think about the fire of the sun, and this is what the I Ching describes, where the I Ching draws its wisdom is from that sun coming up over the earth to where we can experience it. And in that process, the sun is shedding light through fire. It's sending us light through fire across the entire earth. And what is the movement of adventure is that it brings us into contact with everything in the earth. It brings light into contact with everything in the earth. And I had to think to myself, what is this function of the light of the earth and this hexagram and this archetype and everything? It's that light is blazing from a internal fuel that is limitless. When we talk about that hunger, when we talk about hunger as desiring dislocation, that desire spreads across the entire earth, and it just consumes and it consumes and it consumes again. And it doesn't stop consumption. Consumption never ends in that space of that desire in the 30. And here, when we are in that space of receiving the light, orienting to lightness, there's a transformation in how that is related with. And that shows how love in relationship from a space of hunger can never satisfy that need. But connecting to that alchemy that transforms the way that we relate with light, it opens up everything. It changes everything. And I think this hexagram just shows that so perfectly even in this picture, you know, that light that is just that fire that is just, you know, coming through everything. And yes, please respond, Belle. I want to hear what you have to say about that.
I love everything you say. And the only thing I would add is the beauty of the word light, that it's both the light in terms of like light, but it's also that it's not weighing. So that's the thing. When our desires are weighing too much, that's when we get out of adventure. So it's both light in terms of the light and not the dark, and light as light and not heavy. And I just think really, really, it's how, and it's also light as in movement. There is something with this gene key that really speaks about the movement. There is a movement, like we said, with the third lines that I said, the 36, the 35, there is a movement. And because this is what we have with the earth and the fire, there cannot not be a movement, both a vertical movement with the density of the earth and like the lightness and the fastness of the fire, but also the fire, how it really, like how it can move over the earth, and how the earth is kind of saying yes, to, and there's nothing that kind of changes things so fast as the fire. Like we can see that, and even like with the ashes that are there after, it becomes very fertile soil. So I can see the vertical expansion and the horizontal expansion of this, and the way that fire and earth are working together. And maybe in our very limited way of seeing it, we think that fire destroys the earth, but fire and earth have relationships on this planet that is very, very much beyond our, how long we have been on this planet.
Yes, indeed. And I just love how you bring all of that together in this entire discussion that we've been having. And I want to share just a little bit about what this transformation is bringing for us when we take that external focus and it becomes an internal fire. When what happens in the space of our guts is electrically, it is lighting that fire, but we no longer are sourcing outside. And when we do that, then we become connected with a form of that inner fire that is actually boundless, because there is no end of the fueling. There is no end to, there's no longer that fire's hunger involved in it at all. And when we do that, and we continue to connect with that adventure, we gain that awareness that, oh, if I find the fuel within that is never ending, now I can begin to create a process of fusion, like the way the sun does when it shines its light over the entire earth. And that light is the consequence of that fusion of things, elements that are happening inside the sun. So that is what our transmission today is going to be about, is igniting that activation of that inner fusion of every element. And to me, that is the very definition of what love can mean in our lives, in our bodies, in the universe. And it just so, I just love that you brought in that rapturous unity, because there is nothing that describes how love functions than that, to me.
And just for everybody that's here, as last words before we move on to that transmission, everything is alchemy. And I think the fact that we're here is alchemy. So when we take my life's work, earth over earth, and we take John's radiance, fire over fire, we have passionate unity. We have the alchemy there. So it's, of course, we're going to resonate with it. And you can feel that in the aliveness of how we spoke about this. And also like how we kind of went down ways and kind of coming back, like it's all an experience of the, where are we going? Where is the friction? Where is it light orientation? Like I feel the alchemy of how we are embodying those elements as we are creating the alchemy and playing with it. And thank you for everyone as well, Jennifer, you coming in today, and everyone in the chat, because it makes it so much more alive than if we would just record it,
Yeah, absolutely. And to be able to share this sort of exploration with all of you, and to have you so engaged, to have you so filled with the value of your perspective, to share it with us and bring all of that into our discussion. It absolutely enlivens it. And when we do that in a space of adventurousness, it is just so fulfilling for me. And I hope that each of you can feel your own presence reflected in our conversation, because that is why we have it. And the next portion of that is to bring that alchemy into the bodies through an energetic transmission that we will now go to with our members who are here. And I can't wait for the next conversation. And because you are helping to build this energy, and it just really impacts everything that we do. So thank you for your presence here and your contributions. And I really look forward to sharing more with each of you. So, all right, we will say goodbye for now. Our members will join us in our next space. Thank you so much. I am sending loving presence from my heart to each of yours. And I just, it's just an amazing process to be with you all here. So thank you again. Bye-bye for now.